OK， 那我们课程快要开始了，那我再说明一下哈，大家可以看到我们10月份的课程原本是10月6号跟20号，那因为AIT 呢也是建议我，就是美国国会它在审预算通过之前呢，不要在那之前办活动，所以我就10月份的活动我就排到最后2周的礼拜4，好，那就是避开，就说可能会说他们预算通过之前我们就办活动这种状况哈，他们要多做解释有点麻烦，那就是跟各位通知一下，我们10月份改到20号和27号，好，那 Douglas 这边也知道了，好，谢谢。那线上的读者也帮我改一下，要记得哈，好，谢谢。
How's everyone today? Pretty good? Good. I've told you this before, I think, right? I think because I get asked this a lot by people, by Taiwanese friends. They ask me, when an American asks you, how's it going or how are you doing? What are you supposed to say? Fine, thank you. Or good, how are you? Yeah. So I was just talking to somebody a couple weeks ago in America, and he's from Taiwan, and he asked me the same question, because every day Americans, at work, people are saying, "How's it going? How you doing? You know, how you doing? How's And he wasn't sure if he should tell them how he's doing, or just say, "Good, how are you?" So I said, "You always say good. How are you doing?" Or "I'm doing great. How are you?" Yeah, because even I get a little bit confused sometimes. I'm not sure if I should say, "Well, I'm very tired today and I'm very busy." And no, they don't want to know that. So you just say, it's like saying hello, hi. Yeah. Okay. So today I thought we'd start with a COVID-19 story. We haven't looked at this for a while. Of course, I'm sure all of you are getting very tired of COVID-19 and talking about COVID-19. It's been my opinion for quite some time that if the government would stop talking about COVID-19, people would be less worried about it. I mean, it's important, of course, but I think that we can talk about it too much, and then people are overly concerned. But as I think I told you last week, or maybe I think it was last time I told you, even Singapore announced that now you do not have to wear a mask inside. 室内, you can take the mask off. So if Singapore can do it, I think Taiwan can do it too. So hopefully soon. The other thing my friends are all waiting for is for Taiwan to end its quarantine, 隔离, because it just, I mean, I know Taiwanese are very, very careful. They're very cautious, but to me, it doesn't make much sense anymore. Every day you look at the numbers, and there's 2-3万人 locally infected. How many cases are coming in from overseas? Maybe 100 or 1, not many. So it doesn't really make much difference. I mean, COVID is here, it's everywhere. I don't think quarantine is going to make much difference. Okay. So anyhow, it says here, COVID-19, U.S. eyes annual COVID-19 boosters, just like flu. So yeah, I mean, many of my friends would argue that COVID-19 is just like the flu. Okay, so when it says U.S. eyes something, what does that mean if you're eyeing something? Well, you could say you're focusing on it, but there's a slightly even another meaning to it. Watch, but also any other ideas? If you eye something, it means you're thinking about it, you're considering it. So probably the closest word to eyeing something would be to consider it. You could say, I'm eyeing a new car, or I'm eyeing a new motorcycle. It means I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about it. Maybe should I do that or should I not? Or Maybe I should buy that new car, or buy that new motorcycle. So I'm eyeing that. Or you say he's eyeing a new job. If he's thinking about a new job, he's considering a new job. So it's not only you're just thinking about it or watching it, but it means you're considering it. Yes or no, should I do it? So of course it says U.S. eyes annual COVID-19 booster, means the U.S. is thinking about maybe having an annual yearly COVID-19 booster. Now, you know what a booster is, right? A boost means to increase or to enhance, right? So if we enhance, enhance means to make bigger, to grow, right? To boost. So if you boost something, you enhance something, you make it bigger. So to boost, of course, is boosting what? What is a booster shot boosting? What's the word? Starts with an I. Not increase. It has to do with COVID-19. What do we all want for COVID-19? We hope that our bodies will give us what? Well, antibody, yeah, but antibodies give us what? Starts with an I and then an M and then what else? Immunity, yeah. So we want immunity. That's what everybody hopes to have. If you have immunity, then you are immune. You could say, I am immune to COVID-19, or you can say, I have immunity, you know. So enhancing a booster shot will enhance or boost our immunity, because, you know, sometimes after you get sick or if you have a shot, vaccine, your immunity is high and then it starts to drop, right, over time. Now, sometimes some sicknesses will give us lifetime immunity. Lifetime immunity means once you have that shot or once you get sick, you'll never get that again. You'll never catch that sickness again because you have lifetime immunity. Of course, other sicknesses or viruses, we only get temporary, you know, 暂时, temporary immunity means it's, or short-term immunity. So there's other ways of saying that. Okay, so let's say it together. Boost, boost, booster, booster, enhance, enhance, immunity, immunity, lifetime immunity, lifetime immunity, immune, immune. Right, so you can say, I am immune, and then of course, or you can say, I have immunity, okay? So there's a different way of saying that. I am immune, or I have immunity, or I want immunity, or something like that. So immunity is something that you get, but immune is more of a 形容词. Like we have our bodies have an immune system, 系统, to protect us against infections and diseases. So yeah, if you catch a cold, you know, 感冒, you only have a very, very, well, or maybe no immunity against another cold, because there are many, many, many cold viruses. Okay, so anyhow, booster is designed to enhance or boost our immunity. Okay, so the U.S. is eyeing this annual vaccine, this shot, okay? So let's go on and read this. I'll read this first. It says, barring the emergence, let's start again. Barring the emergence of drastically different variants of SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 boosters would likely be recommended annually in a similar manner to influenza vaccines, U.S. health officials said on Tuesday. So I want to start by looking at this first phrase here, because this is a little bit unusual maybe when you see it. It says, barring the emergence of this different variants. Okay, barring something, this first phrase is kind of like a description, it leads into this. So if we say barring this, what does that mean? Yeah, it means except for this or unless. Okay, so we could say except or unless. Unless is probably maybe probably a slightly better word. Unless, okay. So we could say, unless there is an emergence of a drastically different variant of something. So let me think here. I'll give you an example. Barring any unexpected illness, I plan to take a vacation next week, okay? So what does that mean? It means barring any unexpected illness or sickness, I plan on taking a vacation. So it means unless I unexpectedly get sick, I'm going to take a vacation next week. Or barring any accidents, I plan to run in the race tomorrow, okay? Unless I have an accident, I'm going to run in the race. So when we say barring something, it means unless that happens, okay? So unless there's an emergence of a drastically different variant of this virus, they will recommend this annual variant. So did everybody understand that? Okay. So that's just a grammar, a type of English grammar. When we say barring something, we could say unless, you know. Okay, so barring, now we haven't actually talked about the word bar. What does to bar mean? Bar mean, well, bars are like, yeah, but bar has another meaning too. If you bar someone from doing something. No. So barring means to prohibit, to stop. For example, you can say he is barred from entering the building. Means he is prohibited from entering the building. I think we learned the word ban, right? B-A-N. To ban means to prohibit, to stop somebody. You have a ban on something. So you can say he is barred from, I'll give you an example. Sometimes, I think this is true in Taiwan. It's also true in the US, I think. If you commit a crime, you are barred from voting. Well, but different idea. A bar is bars on the window. But this is a 动词. You are barred from something. So you can say, if you commit a crime or you're guilty of a crime, you are barred from voting. You cannot 投票, right? I think that's the law. For a limited time. He's barred from voting for 5 years. Or if you commit a crime, maybe you cannot join it, you cannot go it, you cannot be elected as a government official, right? He is barred from joining the election. Okay, he cannot join the election. She is barred from that business because she did something bad there. I don't know. There's many different ways. So if you're barred from something, you always say barred from something. Okay, he's barred from doing this. He's barred from doing that. It means that they are prohibited. They are not allowed. Okay, we've learned the word prohibited. Sorry? How do you spell that? Privilege. Yeah, you lose your privilege. Yeah. So, obviously voting, I think that's correct. Prohibited. So to prohibit, of course, means to ban, to bar. He is prohibited from entering the building. He is prohibited from voting. He is prohibited from buying this product. Okay. I saw frequently. I see in the news now, especially in Europe. I think it seems like Europe is a bigger problem. Sometimes when at a professional sports game, sometimes the fans will do something or say something to the players that's very bad. Maybe it's racist or something else. And if they do that, the team or the officials will ban that fan or prohibit that fan or bar that fan from coming to the games anymore. They're not allowed to attend the games anymore. I've seen this happen regularly. Like often, I think more recently, it's like if a fan does something very bad, like they say something very racist towards one of the players, and they get caught, the team and the officials will say, you are no longer allowed to attend these games. They are barred from those sports games. They are prohibited from attending those sports games. So why don't we say this word too? Prohibit. Prohibit. Prohibited. Prohibited. Okay. So anyhow, so emerge, what does emerge mean? It says here, barring the emergence of. What does to emerge mean? We've talked about this before. Appear, yeah. So probably the best word for this would be appearance. Now, emerge means to come out, right? To open. Like when I think of emerge, like like you have a flower emerging when it blossoms, it emerges. Or what do you say? A worm, a caterpillar. It turns from there. You have a butterfly. Sometimes will emerge from the. Yeah. So anyhow, emerge or to appear. Of course, appear means also to kind of, we could say appearance or to appear. Okay, so why don't we say it together? To emerge. To emerge. Okay, to appear. To appear. Emergence. Emergence. Appearance. Appearance. Right, you can say he made an appearance at the party. Means I showed up at the party. Someone might say, well, he made a very brief appearance at my party. It means he showed up very briefly. Now, in that regard, we would probably always say appearance. But emergence means like if someone suddenly they come out like they were not visible before. But okay, so we could say that movie, that star emerged during that movie, or that actor emerged during that performance. Okay, so anyhow, it's kind of the similar idea. So emergence of what? Of a drastically different variant of this virus. Okay, that's the official name of the virus. Drastic means what? If something is drastically different, what does that mean? Dramatically means a very big difference. Okay, so this drastically different, okay, drastically describes different. Different is a 形容词, so drastically different. But we can use the word drastic, D-R-A-S-T-I-C. Drastic is also a 形容词, and drastic means a very big, very significant. So for example, you can say there are going to be drastic changes in my life. It means there's going to be very big changes in my life. You can say her appearance changed drastically after she got sick. It means the way she looked changed drastically. Okay, so drastically there becomes a 副词. Okay, but anyhow, whenever you see the word drastic, it means very significant, very big. Okay, not 一点点, but a lot. Okay, so drastic. You can say, wow, I can't believe this drastic difference between before and now. Okay, the drastic difference. You can say his house has a drastically different appearance. Okay, so anyhow, everybody understand that? So let's say the 形容词 first. Drastic. Drastic. Drastically. Drastically. Okay, so it means a very different or a very significant difference. Different variant. Variant, of course, means a type, kind, right? Yang, type, we could say T-Y-P-E or kind, K-I-N-D. A variant, a kind, a type of SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so unless this happens, COVID-19 boosters would likely be recommended. Of course, if you recommend something, you say you should do this. It's not you have to, but usually you suggest. It's like suggesting something. I recommend that you take a break. I recommend that you go on vacation. Okay, so recommended annually, every year, in a similar manner to influenza vaccine. So of course, every year, they have a flu shot, right? Probably many of you have an annual flu vaccine or flu shot. You get a shot for influenza, which is a long word for flu. You know what flu is, right? Okay, so why don't we say together, influenza. Influenza. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, so it's an interesting, lots of interesting words here. Let's read this together then. Barring the emergence of drastically different variants of SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 boosters would likely be recommended annually in a similar manner to influenza vaccines. Let's say it again. Influenza vaccines. Right. U.S. health officials said on Tuesday. Okay. So yeah, a very simple way of saying this would be a flu shot, right? S-H-O-T, flu shot. Every year people talk about getting flu shots. Okay, let's go on. The announcement came after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration last week authorized updated bivalent, I don't know if I'm saying that right, bivalent shots against the original strain of SARS-CoV-2 and the BA4 and BA5 lineages of its Omicron variant, which are predominant. Okay, there's some a little bit technical words here, but last week, the U.S. FDA, that's a government organization, authorized, okay? Authorized, we could say, another word for authorized could be simply, it also starts with an A. What do we say? Not quite. Not quite. It's if you authorize something, you say, okay, you can do this. What's the other word for that? Well, allow. I didn't think of that word, allow, but there's another word that starts with an A. It's what? If you say, okay, you can do it, you are approve. Yeah. So yeah, if you can say he approved. Okay. Now, of course, we can say approval. I got approval to do that. So if you're approved, if someone, you say, I approve of this treatment, or I give you approval, it means I'm going to allow it. I'm going to give you permission, right? So now approve also can mean that you like something, you think it's okay. So for example, you can say the teacher approved of his performance, means the teacher thinks his performance is pretty good. Or you can say, I approved of his new shoes. Maybe he bought a new pair of shoes and he's like, do you like them? And I'm like, oh yeah, those are great. So I approve of his shoes, okay? Or someone gets their new hairstyle. I say, oh, I really approve of your hairstyle. It's great. Okay, so it means I like it. I think it's okay. But if you give someone approval, it means you give them permission, okay? You give them permission. You allow it, okay? So here it says authorized, okay? They approved, okay? So the government will often authorize something. The government might authorize, like I know recently they've been talking about allowing, approving or authorizing 重机 to ride on the 高速公路, right? The big motorcycles. They're talking about it, okay? Does everybody understand that? Okay, so there's different words. You can say I allow it, I give permission, I permit it. We talked about to allow something, to permit something, or give permission. Okay, these are all similar words. Okay, so let's say this together. To approve. To approve. Approval. Approval. Allow. Permit. Authorized. Authorized. Right. So you can say I authorized him to sign my name, or I authorized him to, It's funny because, sometimes I know in Taiwan there's that word 委托. You give someone permission to authorize them to represent you. He's going to represent me in the vote. So I'm going to authorize him to represent me, or to vote for me, or to whatever. Okay, so authorized, permit, allow. There's all different things. Actually, I want to mention this word here. Permit, if you permit someone, you allow someone, you give them permission to do something. But here's another word. I keep mentioning these words where there's two different pronunciations. So I permit someone to do something means I allow them to do something, right? I permit you to go and open a business. The government gave, but if you say this word as a 名词, then it's pronounced permit, okay? So a permit is like usually almost like a document, like a license, almost like a 执照, okay? We say 驾驶执照 is a driving license, but we could say a driving permit, Okay, it's like a document, it's a license to do something. So you can say, I got a permit from the government to, I don't know, whatever. There's many things we get permits for. So again, the pronunciation is, if you permit someone to do something, that's a 动词. But if you say, I received a permit, then it's pronounced differently, okay? So why don't we say this as a 动词, permit, permit. And then as a 名词, permit, permit. Yeah, okay. Okay, so anyhow, the government, the FDA last week authorized, updated, okay, this is a new version, updated bivalent, this is a technical word, shots against the original strain of SARS-CoV-2. Now, when we talk about 病毒, or we often use this word strain. Strain means what? When we talk about a virus, 病毒, what does a strain mean? Strain means what? A version, yes, a version, a kind, a type, okay? So often with sicknesses, you know, a different kind of sickness, but especially 病毒, virus, we talk about a different strain of the virus. Of course, with COVID-19, we've had what? Alpha and Delta, and there's all kinds of different versions of or strains of COVID-19. So why don't we say together, strain, strain. Okay, so an updated shots against the original strain. Okay, this is the original one, the first strain of SARS-CoV-2, and the BA4 and BA5 lineages of the Omicron variant. Now, there's all these words here. There's strain, there's variant. Variant also means a kind, a type, right? But here we have the Omicron variant. Okay, so you know Omicron. Everybody in Taiwan knows Omicron. Omicron variant, okay. We could say Omicron strain as well. We could use that word, okay. But here it says the BA4 and BA5 lineages, okay. So a lineage is a very interesting word. Lineage is a word which we usually use for our family tree. You know what a family tree is, right? I know in Taiwan, many people, they keep track of their family tree, like long, 100 years ago or 200 years ago or even 300 years ago, this is my family, and it came down the family tree. Here's my grandfather and my uncles and my aunts, and here's me and here's my children. We call that a family tree, like a shu, right? But we also can call that a lineage, because you can say, what's your lineage? You can say, oh, my lineage goes all the way back to like in my case, I have a very unusual lineage. I could say my lineage goes back to Bern, Switzerland, okay? That's my family lineage. Goes back to Bern, Switzerland, 瑞士, to Germany, I don't know where in Germany, 德国 somewhere, and also to Guangdong province. So my lineage is very mixed up. You could say my family lineage. Okay, so basically it means like your ancestors, your family tree. So of course here we have the Omicron variant, but from the Omicron variant, we have these two lineages, right? These two versions, the BA4 and BA5 are both types of Omicron. So they use the word lineage in this way. Again, normally if we say lineage, we would talk about your family tree. If I say, what's your lineage? It means what's your background, your family background. Does everybody understand that? So let's read that word together, lineage. Lineage. This is not a word that we use every day, right? I will say this, sometimes if I ask you simply, what is your background? I might say his ancestry, right? Now, we often talk about our ancestors, right? My ancestors, you could say my ancestors came to Taiwan from Fujian, right? Ancestors, Ancestors. Sorry, that's not very clear. So ancestors, this is a word everybody knows in Taiwan. They talk about their ancestors. Why don't we say together, ancestors? Ancestors. Yeah, so Taiwanese are very interesting because their ancestors came, I know many of them came from Fujian, but many of them come from all over China, right? So you could say my ancestors are from, Anhui or Shandong or wherever, okay? So ancestors, but if we use this as a as a kind of an overall, if you just ask somebody, what is your ancestry? It simply means, what is your family background? Where do you come from? Your family, where does it come from? So why don't we say this word too, ancestry. Ancestry. Right, so you can say, oh, what's your ancestry? You say, well, my ancestry is German and Swiss and Chinese. Okay, or you could say, what's your family lineage? We could say that word too. So anyhow, and you say the BA4 and BA5 lineages of its Omicron variant, which are predominant. Okay, what does predominant mean? If something is predominant, there's a clue. When you look at the word, you can see another word there. What is that word? Dominant, right? D-O-M-I-N-A-N-T. Dominant means it's the top. It's the strongest, right? So if something is predominant, it means it's number one. It's in the front. It's the leader. You can say he is the predominant person in his family. It means he's the most powerful person in his family. Okay? So predominant. What's the predominant race? Well, yeah, I mean, people don't like to talk about that too much, but you know, we would like to say there's no predominant race in the world. They're all equal. They're all the same. But you might say, well, you know, or you can say he is predominantly, his family lineage is predominantly German. It means it's mostly German, or it's dominated by Germans in his family tree. Okay, so why don't we say the word dominant? Dominant. Predominant. Predominant. Right. So, you know, if you watch the news recently, of course, everybody's talking about BA4 and BA5 because that's the most that's the predominant version or lineage or strain of COVID-19. Okay. I guess this is under the Omicron variant or strain. So anyhow, these words are all kind of related to each other. Lots of new words here. So let's go ahead and read this. The announcement came after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration last week authorized updated bivalent shots against the original strain of SARS-CoV-2 and the BA4 and BA5 lineages of its Omicron variant, which are predominant. Okay. Any questions about this paragraph? It's a little. I don't know much about it either. It's a new kind of. I know Taiwan is talking about this. It's a new kind of vaccine. Well, it's not a new kind of vaccine, but basically, it's supposed to be more effective against newer strains of COVID-19. So, you know, we have the original vaccine, right? The ones that everyone developed the first time. I think all of us got those, or most of us got those. But this is a new version of the vaccine that's supposed to be updated. It's like it says here, updated. So I don't know. I don't understand the technology or what makes it different. But yeah, maybe you can do some, go to Google, check with Google. Yeah. Okay, so it says here, we likely are moving towards a path with a vaccine cadence similar to that of the annual influenza vaccine, with annual updated COVID-19 shots matched to the currently circulating strains. U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci told reporters. Okay, I think you all know who Fauci is, right? He's been on the news nonstop for the last 2.5 years in America. Yeah, like Chen Shizhong. Yeah, exactly. He's like Chen Shizhong. He's like the American Chen Shizhong. But like Chen Shizhong, I think some Americans really like him and some people don't like him. It's funny because I think anyone like this is going to be very controversial, right? Because they'll say things, maybe they'll say one thing and then later on they'll say, oh well, this is different. And yes, anyhow, Anthony Fauci. It says here, we are likely, of course, likely means will probably or likely, we are probably moving towards a path. Okay, path means like a 路线, right? A direction, a way, with a vaccination cadence similar to that of the annual influenza vaccine. Now, this word cadence, this is a word we very, very seldom use, but it's an interesting word. Cadence is a pattern. Okay, but I'll tell you where it gets used a lot. For example, a walking cadence. Like if you have a pattern of walking and it's regular, right? Your cadence. It means you're taking it's like a pattern of stepping. But I'll tell you, like even with bicycling, some people when they pedal their bicycles, they pedal fast. They like to, or they're pedaling more slow. Of course, you can change that with your gears. Bicycles have gears, right? So, I remember I was reading, cadence, like, should you be pedaling more faster? Is it better to do that? Or is it better to be in a low gear and pedaling more slowly or what? So, or if people are marching, like, soldiers or students, they have this cadence that they're marching in. It means it's a regular pattern. So what it basically means is a pattern. Okay, so it means that, every year, we have this pattern. Every year we have usually once a year, we have a flu shot, right? It follows the same pattern every year. Okay, but they're saying we're going to follow a path. We're moving towards a vaccine or cadence pattern similar to that of an annual flu shot. Okay, so I think you all know the pattern, the word pattern, right? P-A-T-T-E-R-N, a pattern. There's patterns on my shirt. We have patterns of behavior. It means it means something that we follow. It's a yeah. So why don't we say this word together? Cadence. Cadence. Yeah. Again, it's not a word we use very often, but that's what it means. Okay. So a vaccination cadence or pattern similar to that of the annual influenza vaccine, with annual updated COVID-19 shots matched to the currently circulating strain. So it means that, every year, if COVID-19 keeps changing a little bit, whatever strain is currently right now circulating means 发行, right? Going around or going around. We're going to have a updated shot, email, that is matched to the current strain, whatever the strain is now. Like, so today we have this strain, we'll have a shot matched to that strain, just like flu, right? Every year there's a new flu shot because there's different strains of flu. Okay, now we could, instead of the word match, we could say paired, P-A-I-R-E-D, paired to the currently circulating strain. It's paired, it's matched, it's together with, it's with that, okay? Any questions on this? Okay. Now, this guy, Fauci, he is the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director. Of course, this is a government agency. What is allergy? A-L-L-E-R-G-Y. What is allergy? 过敏, yeah. Since I've been very young, I'm allergic to dust. 灰尘, yeah. Dust. Yeah. 灰尘, yeah. D-U-S-T, dust. And unfortunately, Taiwan has lots of dust. I'm always amazed. I clean my house, and a few days later, there's more dust. Okay, D-U-S-T. Let's say it together. Dust. Dust. My business partner at COMPASS杂誌magazine, he's I think his allergy is very sad. I mean, I kind of laugh because it is kind of sad. He's allergic to very unusual pork, 猪肉. And I always say, oh, 很可怜, because Taiwan has wonderful pork, but Taiwan pork is very good to eat, right? It's very tasty, and he's allergic to it. Now, of course, if he eats it, he doesn't have to go to the hospital, but he doesn't feel well. It makes him feel unwell. and he actually tested. He took a test, and they said, "Oh, you're allergic to pork." I was like, "Oh, that's terrible. No more pork." So yeah. So why don't we say together, allergy? Allergy. Now, of course, if you say I am allergic, so that would be allergic, allergic to, okay? He is allergic to cats. He is allergic to, I hear this all the time. Some children are allergic to peanuts, 花生, okay? So you say I am allergic to. Now, we can use this word in a funny way, too. For example, if you can say someone is allergic to criticism, you know, it means they don't like people to 批评他们. You say he is allergic to criticism, means you cannot criticize him, right? So that's kind of a funny way of saying that. What else we can, anyhow, there's other ways we can use that word. Okay, so let's read this. We are likely moving towards a path with a vaccination cadence. Let's say it one more time. A vaccination cadence similar to that of the annual influenza vaccine. Influenza vaccine. With annual updated COVID-19 shots. Matched to the currently circulating strains. Circulating strains. U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci told reporters. Let's say his last name again. It's pronounced with it's pronounced with a CH sound, so like a ch. So let's say it again, Fauci. Okay, yeah. Remember too that the word allergy, this is pronounced with a J sound. So let's say that too, allergy. Allergy. Okay. Oh, that's a photo. Okay, so it says here, however, elderly and immunocompromised people might require more frequent shots, and the annual strategy would have to be reviewed in case of a curveball, such as a dangerous new variant that differs dramatically from predictions. Okay, so they're saying, but there might be some other. So it says, however, elderly, of course, you know what elderly is. Elderly and immunocompromised people. Now, first of all, we have two words here that are together. Immune refers to this, right? We talked about our immune system. Now, if our immune system is compromised, what does that mean? It means that there's a problem. If something has been compromised, it means something has been, I don't want to say broken, but it's not working like it should be. I'm trying to think of another way to say compromised. Damaged, yeah, that's a good word. Damaged, 破坏了 or 伤害. So I'll give you a word when this word gets used a lot, like security, like in a building, like if we have security or our national security, like our 国家国安, if you say it's been compromised, it means that there's a hole, 好像有破一个洞, right? There's a problem, okay? You can say our security has been compromised. Like we talk about internet security or our privacy has been compromised. It means there's a hole. It's like there's a hole or there's a problem, there's damage. Okay, so if our immunity system is compromised, it means that we could get sick. It means our immunity system is not 100%. It's not working like it should. It means that we could actually catch that virus or whatever. Okay, so this word becomes one big 形容词. Okay, so first of all, let's read this word here, compromised. Compromised. Now, compromise is used in a different way as well. I think we've talked about this. If we are having a debate or discussion or a disagreement and I compromise or I make a compromise, what does that mean? Agree with something or I give you something. Okay, let's say we're having a discussion. You say, well, I think this and I think this. And I say, okay, I will agree with you on this point or I will give you this. And then maybe we can stop arguing. Okay, so I will compromise. Now, of course, if someone will not compromise, it means they say, no, I'm not going to change my ideas. I'm not going to give you anything. I'm just going to stay with my position. Okay, so I will not compromise. Of course, there are certain things we should never compromise, like honesty, right? We shouldn't compromise our honesty or, trust or things like that. So anyhow, here, if our honesty or trust is compromised, it's kind of a similar idea, right? It means that it's not reliable. 不可靠, right? It's not 100%. So why don't we say this word together, this long word, immunocompromised. Immunocompromised. Right. In Taiwan, I see every day in the news when they talk about COVID-19, some people, they get very sick, or unfortunately, some people even die from COVID-19 because they have other sicknesses, other health issues, right? And they become immunocompromised because of these other problems, these other health issues. Okay, so elderly and immunocompromised people might require more frequent shots, more frequently, more often, okay? And the annual strategy, we've talked about this word before. What's a very simple word for strategy? Plan, yes. The annual plan or strategy would have to be reviewed. We have to review it. We have to look at it in case, okay, now this is a very funny expression, but one that you might understand. In case of a curveball. Now this is where does this come from? What sport? What sport does this come from? Baseball. I know if there's one sport that Taiwanese love, it's baseball, right? So what is a curveball? Does anyone know? How do you say it in Chinese? Yeah. So when a pitcher throws a curveball, it's to confuse the batter, right? The ball moves in a curve is like this, right? So if you can throw a curveball, the ball goes like this, and of course, maybe the batter can't hit it. So he's saying that what would be a curveball here? A curveball would be something that would change everything, that would confuse people, would be like a dangerous new variant of COVID-19 that is different from predictions, from what we think will happen. It says differs dramatically, or we could say is dramatically different. Is dramatically different or differs dramatically. It's the same idea from predictions. Of course, prediction, we have to predict what the new variant is going to be. We have to predict how COVID-19 will change this year and all that. So does everybody understand that? Okay, so if you're having an argument with or you're having a discussion or something suddenly happens that changes everybody, you can say, wow, that was a real curveball, okay? Or if let's say we're having a debate and you throw in a new argument, I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that. You can say, he threw a curveball at me, okay? He threw me a curveball. Okay, so it's a funny expression, but one, some countries don't understand baseball. Like I have some friends from Singapore that are working in Taiwan, and I asked them, I said, have you ever watched a baseball game? They're like, no. I'm like, do you know anything about baseball? They're like, well, I know there's a guy who hits the ball and somebody throws the ball, but they don't know anything about baseball. But Taiwanese, they know baseball. So why don't we say together, curveball. Curveball. Okay. Okay, so let's read this. However, elderly and immunocompromised people might require more frequent shots. And the annual strategy would have to be reviewed. in case of a curveball, such as a dangerous new variant that differs dramatically from predictions. Right. Yeah. So, fortunately, there were no dramatic changes from the typhoon predictions. It was funny, last week, that was one of those I saw in the news. They were saying, what do they call it? A guai typhoon, or guai tai, right? Because it moves in a very strange direction. It was like a check mark. It went like this, and then suddenly went like this. And the news was saying, maybe we have our predictions for this typhoon, but maybe there will be a dramatic change, a big change in the path of the storm. Fortunately, it didn't. It went down and then went up and towards Korea. Okay, so it says here, White House COVID-19 coordinator Ashish Jha said the message was simple. If you are 12 or older and have been previously vaccinated, now is the time to get a booster. Okay, so he's saying this is a simple message. Okay, although I was reading this news online, and I already saw in the comments many Americans don't agree with this. I was reading, many of the comments were like, why? Why do I need to do this? Because I already got 2 shots and I still got sick. That's what a lot of people said. I got my vaccine and I still got COVID-19. So what difference does it make, you know? Or other people are like, I don't want to keep taking vaccines over and over and over again. That's it. I've gotten my 2 shots or my 3 shots. I'm never getting any more. So it's very funny how in America, at least with Americans, I'm sure some other people, non-Americans too, but many Americans are already questioning this policy. They're like, no, I'm not going to do this, you know. So it's kind of like I said before, when you tell Americans you must do this, many Americans will automatically say, no, I'm not going to do it. So it's kind of this rejection of authority. Okay, so let's read this together. White House COVID-19 coordinator Ashish Jha said the message was simple. If you are 12 or older and have been previously vaccinated, now is the time to get a booster. Right. And then I'll go on. It says here, if you were recently infected or vaccinated, it's reasonable to wait a few months, he added. People can get their COVID-19 booster at the same time as the flu booster, he said. Okay. I'll read this all together here. Officials expect millions of people to receive their bivalent boosters made by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna this month, and are focused especially on people aged 50 or older. Okay. It's interesting too, because I was reading, some people disagree with this point here too. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't get the 2 shots at the same time. You should, maybe wait a week or something so you don't get them at the same time. Again, this is, people have different thoughts on this, right? One thing I want to add, when people dispute this, I've been reading this too, and again, this is people's personal opinion. A lot of people said, look, why do I have to keep getting shots every year? Because, whoops. I'm trying to figure this out. There we are. Okay. They talk about, a lot of people are talking about natural immunity, right? They'll say, if I have natural immunity, what's natural immunity? Natural immunity means immunity that you get from your own body, right? We all have natural immunity. because if you don't have a natural immunity, you would get sick from everything, right? So we all have natural immunity, or when we get sick, our bodies will give us some measure or some kind of a natural immunity. So a lot of people are disputing this or arguing about this. They're saying, look, how many vaccines do I need, or do I need vaccines because I also have natural immunity? And so this is a very, with this COVID-19, this has been a debate for 2.5 years now. So anyhow, if you're recently infected or vaccinated, it's reasonable to wait a few months. Okay, wait a few months to get your booster. And then let's see if there's any other new words here. Yeah, let's read this then. If you were recently infected, or vaccinated, it's reasonable to wait a few months. He added, people can get their COVID-19 booster at the same time as the flu booster. He said, officials expect millions of people to receive their bivalent boosters made by Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna this month, and are focused especially on people aged 50 or older. Okay, this just for your information, this is this word Pfizer is pronounced with an F. There's no P. We don't say P. We say Pfizer. Pfizer. Yeah. So it's a very big drug company. Yeah. If we say it's reasonable, I didn't mention if it's reasonable means it's not a bad idea. It's a reasonable. If you make a reasonable suggestion to somebody, it means it's something that is not. It's not strange. It's not unusual. It's not unreasonable, right? It's a good suggestion. So he's saying it's reasonable to do that. Okay. Let's read one or two more paragraphs, and then we'll go to a new story. He says, winter is not that far away. The past 2 years, we have seen COVID-19 cases and deaths soar. It does not have to be that way this year. U.S. President Joe Biden said in a statement, if you are 12 or older, go get your new COVID shot this fall. Okay, so of course we've talked about the word soar. Soar means to go very high, to move, go high, grow very high. Of course, we usually use this for flying. If you have a bird, like a bird will soar in the air, means an eagle soaring in the sky means he's very high in the sky. Okay, so let's read this. Winter is not that far away. The past 2 years, we have seen COVID-19 cases and deaths soar. It does not have to be that way this year. U.S. President Joe Biden said in a statement, if you are 12 and older, go get your new COVID-19 shot this fall. Right. Okay. Let's go on to a different story then. Any questions on this story? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Where are we here? So I saw another story here. This story has been on my mind for a while because I do think it's something that should be improved. So the title, the headline of the story says, Hong Kongers, okay, it's funny because Hong Konger is one way of saying it. I've heard people say honkies. That's another funny way. That's more of a funny, I don't see that usually used in the news, but I've seen people in Hong Kong, it's almost a joke, but they call themselves honkies. Yeah. So, but Hong Konger is probably more common. Why don't we say together, Hong Konger? Hong Konger. Okay, so they're facing bureaucracy conundrum. Now, bureaucracy, you know what a bureaucracy is, right? A bureaucracy, how do you say this in Chinese? It's all the, in a government, you have all the government offices and officials inside the government. We call that a bureaucracy. Now, of course, if we say something is, all governments have a certain bureaucracy, right? But if there's too much bureaucracy, it's not good, right? Because you know how it is, and sometimes even I know, especially in Taiwan, when you need to get something done, you have to go to this office, and then you have to go to that office, and then you have to go to that office, and everyone has to 盖章, and then it takes forever. And we say it is very bureaucratic. Bureaucratic means there's too much bureaucracy, and there's another expression we use for that. I think we've talked about this before. We say there's too much, yes, there's too much red tape. Now, to be very honest, I have no idea where this expression comes from. It must be something to do with the West. Maybe a long time ago, maybe they used red tape for something. But if we say there's too much red tape, or I had to go through a lot of red tape to do something, it means I had to go through a lot of bureaucracy, or it was very, very bureaucratic. Okay, so have you heard this term before, red tape? Okay, anyhow, let's say it together, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. And then as a 形容词, with a TIC, bureaucratic. Bureaucratic. Right. So it says here, Hong Kong is facing bureaucracy conundrum. And this, I don't know if we've learned this word or not. What is a conundrum? Yes, that's probably the closest word. So he used the word dilemma. Dilemma. And a simple word for dilemma would be, a very simple word for dilemma would be a problem. Okay? He has a great dilemma, a conundrum. It means basically usually a conundrum is a very complicated problem or issue or challenge. Okay? So if you say, I'm really in a conundrum right now because my parents want me to do this, but my friends want me to go there. Okay, so that's my conundrum. Should I go spend time with my parents because they're my parents, but I really want to see my friends and spend time with them, so that's my conundrum. It's a problem. Usually a conundrum or a dilemma means often we have 2 or 3 or more different choices, and we have to decide what to do. So it's like a challenge. It's something we have to think through. So yeah, it's a problem is maybe that's too general of a word, but usually a dilemma or a conundrum is we have these different 选择 and we're trying to figure out what to do. Okay, so why don't we say together dilemma? Dilemma. We could some people also say dilemma or dilemma. What's my dilemma? Okay, so one more time, dilemma. Okay, and then this longer word, conundrum. Conundrum. Okay, it's a difficulty, it's a problem, it's a challenge, okay, a conundrum. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Hong Kongers are facing a bureaucracy conundrum. The reason why I'll just introduction. I really been thinking about this because I know a lot of Hong Kong people in Taichung. They moved here over the last several years, and most of them want to stay. They want to stay in Taiwan. They want to make their lives here. But I feel like the government is making a lot of mafan for them, right? And recently, it irritates me because I know Taiwan needs to protect itself against China, right? But by doing so, sometimes they're too strict, for Hong Kong people to come into Taiwan. They're like, well, you might be a Chinese spy or something, and I really don't think 99.9% of these people are not Chinese spies, or they're not trying to spy on Taiwan. But yet it seems like Taiwan has built this very high wall, for these Hong Kong people to come in and stay here. Now you can come in, short term, but the problem is, what if they want to stay here? They want to get a 身份证, they want to become Taiwanese. And to me, Taiwan should be welcoming these people because they bring a lot of talent, a lot of skill, a lot of they're good new people to come into Taiwan. And right now, if you read the news, Taiwan needs more people, right? They shouldn't be stopping people from coming to Taiwan. They should be welcoming people to come to Taiwan, not just from Hong Kong, of course, but from all over the world. Because right now, we're in a global situation where human resources are very, very limited. And a country that does not have enough human resources is going to go down. Even China is facing this problem because they're not having enough children. But Taiwan has the same problem. Korea has the lowest childbirth rate in the world right now. Korea, not Han. But Taiwan is in a battle with other countries in Asia and around the world for human resources. If you don't have enough engineers, enough teachers, enough doctors, enough anybody to do stuff, your economy and everything is going to drop. You're going to lose your competitiveness. I saw that Singapore just introduced a new visa that says anyone, if you have skills in these areas, we welcome you. You can come in, and you and your husband or wife can work in Singapore. We want you to come. So you can see that even Singapore is now saying, hey, come to Singapore, come live here. So I think, when I look at these Hong Kongers, I know these people, especially the ones that are here in Taichung, and they're talented, they're driven, they want to contribute to Taiwan. We should be welcoming them. So anyhow, it says Hong Kong facing bureaucracy conundrum. Okay. So let's read this. It says some immigrants from Hong Kong who are trying to obtain permanent residency have complained about the lack of clarity surrounding the pertaining regulations, making it more difficult for them to attain that status. Okay. So these are immigrants, people that moved to Taiwan from Hong Kong, are trying to obtain. Obtain means what? What's a simple word for obtain? Get. Okay, I want to obtain. You say, I'd like to obtain permission. I'd like to obtain a driver's license. Okay, to get. Let's say it together, obtain. Obtain. Okay, permanent residency. Now, permanent residency, I think could mean probably at least two things. I have permanent residency in Taiwan, but that's called a 永久居留证, right? I'm not a Taiwanese citizen, but I can stay here long time. Yeah, I don't have to renew my residency. It's like a green card, 绿卡. In America, we call that permanent residency. But it could also mean, I guess technically permanent residency could also mean a 身份证. So why don't we say together, permanent residency. Permanent residency. Okay, so they're trying to obtain this. They have complained about the lack of clarity. Now, lack of means 缺, right? If you 缺, you lack something. What is clarity? If you look at the word, you can tell what it means. Clear. It comes from the word clear, and clear means 清楚, right? If something is very clear, 很清楚. So if you lack, of course, if you want to turn that into a noun, a 名词, it's called clarity. So you can say, I have great clarity about what I should do. It means I'm very clear about what I should do. Or if I lack clarity, it means I'm unclear. I don't know what I should do. So why don't we say together, clarity. Clarity. Okay, so they're complaining about the lack of clarity surrounding, around the pertaining regulations. Now, of course, regulation is like a law, right? Pertaining regulations means, what would be another word? This is a little bit strange, but what would be a better word here, another word for this? relevant or related regulations. So if we say these regulations pertain to something, it means they are related to this, okay? If you say something pertaining to that, it means it's related to that. So here we've said, instead of pertaining, I think it might be easier to say related. Simply to say related regulations, pertaining regulations. You can say these regulations are related to that or pertaining to that. Okay, this word pertaining is not used as much. So why don't we say together pertaining? Pertaining. And often we say pertaining to something. Okay, so surrounding the pertaining regulations, making it more difficult for them to attain that status. Now, of course, status is, permanent residency status. If you go on Facebook, people say, what's your relationship status? Are you single? Are you married or divorced or whatever? Okay. But to attain, what's a simple word for attain? Very simple. To get. Yes, to get something. Attain. I want to attain, I don't know. Some people want to attain wealth or fame or, satisfaction. They want to get it. Okay. So here they want to attain this permanent residency status. Okay. So one more time, attain. Attain. Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's read this. Some immigrants from Hong Kong who are trying to obtain permanent residency have complained about the lack of clarity surrounding the pertaining regulations. Let's say it again. Pertaining regulations. Making it more difficult for them to attain that status. Status. Okay. I'll go on. It says, people from Hong Kong and Macau can apply for permanent residency if they have been living in Taiwan for at least 1 year with the status of professional immigrant. Okay, so that's if you're here for 1 year as a professional immigrant, I guess that means you're working, you're doing a job here. Okay, then you can get this permanent residency. Okay, so let's read this. People from Hong Kong and Macau can apply for permanent residency if they have been living in Taiwan for at least 1 year with the status of professional immigrant. Okay. However, some professional immigrants say that the regulations pertaining to permanent residency applications are not clear and seem to be constantly changing. Okay, so here we use the word pertaining to. Okay, so instead of saying pertaining as a 形容词, it says regulations pertaining to, so related to or regarding. Actually, that'd be another word, regarding. We could simply say regulations regarding permanent residency or related to or pertaining to. Those are all the same ideas, okay, are not clear and seem to be constantly changing. Okay, so let's read this. However, some professional immigrants say that the regulations pertaining to permanent residency applications are not clear and seem to be constantly changing. Okay, that's a photo. Okay, so here it says, a 56-year-old nurse from Hong Kong who asked to be identified only as Tiki told the Central News Agency that her efforts to obtain permanent residency have stalled because the National Immigration Agency is asking for additional documents that she had not been told about before. Okay, so this is a nurse, okay? So she's not using her full name. I'm sure this is very sensitive. So her efforts to obtain permanent residency had stalled. Now, we've talked about this word before, stalled. What does that mean? Delayed, or simply, would be another word, even more simple. Stopped. Yeah. So this word often gets used, or probably originally gets used with what? Your car. Yeah. If your car stalled, it means the engine stops and you can't go any further. You can say, my car stalled on the side of the road, or my car is stalled on the side of the road. Okay. So it means, like, what is it? 抛锚. It's can't go. So if something is stalled, it means it's not going forward. It's not moving forward. It's stopped. So let's say it together, stalled. Stalled. But it can also be, someone said delayed. It can also say to delay something, to stall something. So for example, if you try to stall for time, it means you're trying to hold back the time. You're trying, let's say your friend is with you and they say, well, I have to leave now. I have to go. But you want them to stay longer. So you try to stall for time. You're like, oh, well, hey, I want to show you my new living room. So why don't you stay and look at this? You're trying to stall them. You're trying to delay them from leaving. Okay, so that's another way of using that word, stall. Okay, so they were stalled because the NIA is asking for additional documents that she had not been told about before. Okay, so let's read this. A 56-year-old nurse from Hong Kong who asked to be identified only as Tiki told the Central News Agency that her efforts to obtain permanent residency have stalled because the National Immigration Agency is asking for additional documents that she had not been told about before. Right. Okay. Tiki said she moved to Taiwan in March last year as a professional immigrant with the hope of acquiring permanent residency a year later. I'll just go on and read this too. However, 4 months after she, in March, filed her application, she received a letter from the NIA asking her to provide a nursing certificate issued in Taiwan or a letter of employment from a Taiwanese medical institute, she said. Now, of course, when we say medical institute, that could be any sort of hospital or a clinic, a 诊所 or something. Any medical, we say medical institution, TION. Actually, that's the word I would usually use. I would say medical institution. Could be a hospital, clinic, or whatever. Okay, so yes. Yeah, and that's why I prefer to use institution. Well, I guess you could say institution for a school, but yeah, institute is. When I think institute, I tend to think of an educational institute, like a university. But institution, in my mind at least, it seems to have a broader idea. I mean, it could be a school, it could be a hospital, it could be a clinic. Yeah. So anyhow, it's pretty similar. Okay. So let me see if there's any words. Okay, you know what a nursing certificate is, right? It's like, if you're a nurse, you have to have a certificates, like a 驾驶执照 almost, but for nursing. Well, 执照, yeah, certificate or license. We could say a license, okay? A letter of employment, of course, is a letter that shows that you are employed, right? So if you say, I am employed by them, you get maybe a letter of employment, okay? Okay, so let's read this. Tiki said she moved to Taiwan in March last year as a professional immigrant with the hope of acquiring permanent residency a year later. However, 4 months after, she in March filed her application. She received a letter from the NIA asking her to provide a nursing certificate issued in Taiwan or a letter of employment from a Taiwanese medical institute. She said. Okay, I just want to add that we said obtaining, and of course this word is the same as obtain, to acquire, to get, to obtain, okay? Let's say it again, acquiring. Yeah, sometimes the word acquire has a slightly more idea of buying something, but it doesn't have to. Of course, here it doesn't mean to buy. You don't buy a permanent residency. But sometimes when you say to acquire something, it also means to purchase, to buy. But it can also mean to get. To acquire means simply to get. But sometimes, yeah, so whereas to obtain is not usually to buy something. You obtain it, you just get it, okay? So there's a slight difference there sometimes, not always. Okay, so before she migrated to Taiwan, she had not been told that she would need those documents to obtain permanent residency, Tiki said. I'll go on here. She said that 2 friends who are also trained nurses and had moved to Taiwan were granted permanent residency in February, about 4 months after they filed their applications, even though they were not working as nurses in Taiwan. And they were not asked to submit a locally issued nursing certificate. Okay, so that's where the problem lies, right? Is her friends didn't need that, but now they're saying you need that. and this I've run into this before, and unfortunately, as we say, it's inconsistent. So consistent means it's always the same, right? It never changes. For example, you can say he is consistently on time. He's always on time. But inconsistent means 不一定, right? Yeah, sometimes you're there, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you say this, sometimes you say that. So something is inconsistent, okay? So why don't we say it together? Consistent. Consistent. Inconsistent. Inconsistent. Okay, so let me just see here if there's any words. Okay, I think, yeah, we can read it. Before she migrated to Taiwan, she had not been told that she would need those documents. To obtain permanent residency. Tiki said. She said that 2 friends who are also trained nurses and had moved to Taiwan were granted permanent residency in February, about 4 months after they filed their applications. Even though they were not working as nurses in Taiwan, and they were not asked to submit a locally issued nursing certificate. Okay, I see a couple other words here I want to remind you of. They were granted permanent residency. What's another word for grant? Given. Yeah, if you grant somebody, often this word gets used if a government or authority gives some permission or gives authority or gives something. You say he was granted this, he was given this, okay? Now, of course, your parents can grant you permission to go out, right? He was granted permission to go out with his friends. So often it's the idea of authority. Some sort of authority is giving something to someone below them. So it could be your parents, it could be the government, it could be a leader, grants something to somebody below them. So that's the where we use grant. They were granted, they were given permanent residency about 4 months after they filed their application. Now, of course, applications be like your 申请书 or whatever. And often we say to file, now file is, like a, file, but file means also to turn in, to give in. Like we file our taxes, right? Every year we have to 报税, right? So we file our taxes. We have to fill out these documents and we give them to the government. So here they're filing their application, and they were not asked to submit locally issued. Now, of course, if you issue something, it means you give it, right? We are issued a driver's license. We are issued certain documents. It means, again, to be given something, but often like a document or permission or something like that. Usually it's like a document, or a certificate or something like that. Okay, so issue a locally issued nursing certificate. Okay, so it says here, Hong Kong nurses might be allowed to enter Taiwan as professional immigrants if they hold a nursing certificate acquired in Hong Kong and can show work experience at a hospital there for at least 2 years, the Ministry of the Interior told CNA. Okay. So this is according, Ministry of Interior, of course, is the 内政部. Okay. So let's read this. Let me just see if there's any words here. Okay. Hong Kong nurses might be allowed to enter Taiwan as professional immigrants. If they hold a nursing certificate acquired in Hong Kong and can show work experience at a hospital there for at least 2 years. The Ministry of the Interior told CNA. Okay, next paragraph. It says the NIA and the Mainland Affairs Council declined to comment on specific cases, but the NIA said that neither a Taiwanese certificate nor proof of employment is a prerequisite for granting permanent residency to professional immigrants from Hong Kong. Okay, so here you have, it's inconsistent, right? We don't know, 谁知道, right? So here it says they declined to comment. Of course, if you decline to, right? We've talked about this before. It means you decide not to. You don't. You say, I decline to to go to the party. I declined his invitation. I declined to help him. Okay, means I said no, basically. So they declined to comment on specific cases. But the NIA said that neither a Taiwanese certificate nor proof of employment is a prerequisite for granting permanent residency. This is a word I don't think we've ever looked at before. A prerequisite. What do you know what another word for this would be? There's a much simpler, easier word than prerequisite. Yes, very good. Requirement. Okay. So if we say, what is the prerequisite for applying for this job? You can say, well, you have to have a university degree, you have to have 3 years of experience, you have to speak English. Those are prerequisites. Those are requirements. Okay? So we use the word prerequisite for something. What is your prerequisite here for granting permanent residency? Okay, they're saying these are not prerequisites. So why don't we say it together? Prerequisite. Prerequisite. Okay, yeah. This word is fairly common, although we probably use the word requirement more often. Okay, so let's read this. The NIA and the Mainland Affairs Council declined to comment on specific cases. Specific cases. But the NIA said that neither a Taiwanese certificate nor proof of employment is a prerequisite. Again, prerequisite for granting permanent residency to professional immigrants from Hong Kong. Okay, so you notice here, sometimes we can say either or neither nor, right? Either or, neither nor. Okay, pretty simple, I think. Okay, so it says here, permanent residency applications by Hong Kong professionals are usually reviewed on a case-by-case basis by a committee comprising officials from the NIA, the council, and other government agencies. Okay, it said. I'll go on. It says, applicants would be asked to provide proof of employment or professional licensing in Taiwan only if the circumstances require that, the NIA said, without elaborating. Okay, so there's a couple words here. Permanent residency from Hong Kong officials, professionals are usually referred on a case-by-case basis. This is a very, very common expression. If we say a case-by-case basis, what does that mean? If you decide something on a case-by-case basis, what does that mean? Right. Every situation is different. Right. It means we look at every case on its own. You know, there's not one just general standard. So if you say, let's say the government has to approve a new investment, a new investment 投资 project, you say they will decide on a case-by-case basis. They'll look at this case unique individually, and they'll look at this case individually, and so they'll decide every case on its own. They might approve this one, but not approve that one. Okay, so this is a very common expression, on a case-by-case basis. Let's say it together, case-by-case basis. Case-by-case basis. Okay, it says, who decides? By a committee comprising officials. Okay, now when we say comprising, it means a committee made up of, okay, who's in the committee? It's made up of officials from the NIA, the council, and other government agencies. Okay, now we could say a committee comprised, comprised of officials from. So you can say comprising officials from or comprised of. Okay? So why don't we say together comprising, comprising, and then the other way, comprised of, comprised of. Yeah, same way, same idea. Okay, and then here it says, let's see. Okay, applicants would be asked to provide proof of employment or professional licensing in Taiwan only if the circumstances require. Circumstances are what? What's another simple word for circumstances? Yeah, situation. If the situation requires that, if the circumstances require, so circumstances and situation are very similar. What are his circumstances right now? What is his situation right now? You can say he's in a very bad, his circumstances are not very good, or he's in his situation is not very good. Okay? So why don't we say together circumstances? Circumstances. So they're saying they would only ask for these things if the situation requires that they do that, or the circumstances require that. Okay? Without, they said this, without elaborating. Now we've used, I think we've learned this word before. To elaborate on something, or with elaborating, what does that mean? To go into details, right? So if you're, I know when you were a kid, I had the same problem or issue, not problem, it's just the way it is. If your parents say, don't do that, and you say, why? And they say, because I said so, right? You want them to elaborate, right? You want them to give you a reason. They say, well, because of this and this and this and this. That's to elaborate. Elaborate means to go into detail, to give you more information. But if you say without elaborating, it means just that's the way it is. Or I'm not going to give you more information. I'm not going to give you more details. So if your parents just say, do it because I said so, okay, that's it. They're not elaborating on their decision. Okay? So why don't we say together, elaborating. Elaborating. Now, I think I told you the word before, elaborate, with a E-L-A-B-O-R-A-T-E is a 形容词. And what does that mean? It means very detailed. Very detailed. So you can see the relationship here between these two words. You can say he made a very elaborate plan to finish this project. Okay, an elaborate plan would be a plan with many, many details. It's got a lot of parts to it. It's very complicated, very complex. So it's very elaborate. Or you can say the decorations of this room are very elaborate. Okay, there's a lot of colors and pictures and signs, and it's very elaborate. Okay, so why don't we say that word to elaborate? Elaborate. Yeah, so it could be complex, complicated, very detailed. Probably detailed would be the closest word, very detailed. Okay, so let's read these two paragraphs then. Permanent residency applications by Hong Kong professionals are usually reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Let's say it again, case-by-case basis. By a committee comprising officials from the NIA, the council, and other government agencies. It said, okay, applicants would be asked to provide proof of employment. Or professional licensing in Taiwan only if the circumstances require that. Let's say last part again. Circumstances require that. The NIA said, without elaborating. Right. Okay. So the council gave similar information saying that the government wants to ensure that Hong Kong professional immigrants could apply their professional skills to make a good and secure living in Taiwan after they obtain permanent residency. So here, I just want to point out, it's a small thing, but it does have a slightly different meaning. To make a good and secure living. So really what we're looking at is here, to make a living, okay? When we say to make a living, what does that mean? Of course, live means to, you live somewhere, but here it says to make a living. What does that mean? Yeah, to support yourself, to have a job. If someone asks you, how do you make a living? You might say, well, I work as a teacher, or I have my own business. So that's to make a living, or to make your living, right? Means to support yourself, to pay the bills, so yeah. So here it says to make a good living. If you make a good living, means you're earning a lot of money, or you're making a good amount of money. And secure living, of course, means you have a secure job. So basically it means to have a solid job, or solid income, to support yourself after they obtain permanent residency. Okay? Okay, let's read this. The council gave similar information, saying that the government wants to ensure that Hong Kong professional immigrants could apply their professional skills to make a good and secure living in Taiwan after they obtain permanent residency. Residency. Right. We get residency, right? If we get residency, then we are a resident. Now, technically, anyone who lives anywhere is a resident, right? You don't have to officially have residency, but when you get residency, usually that means you have official residency. You are officially a resident of a place. Like that's what a 居留证 is, right? It's a resident certificate. It's residency. It allows you to reside somewhere. Okay. So it says here, for foreign nationals who are neither, here's that word neither nor again. Foreign nationals who are neither Chinese nor residents of Hong Kong or Macau, stricter residency rules apply in Taiwan. They are eligible for permanent residency only after they have legally stayed in Taiwan for at least 5 years and spent more than 183 days each year in the country, the NIA said. Okay, so these are foreign nationals. I would be someone like this. Foreign nationals who are neither Chinese nor residents of Hong Kong, stricter, or Macau, stricter residency rules apply. So they are eligible. What does eligible mean? We talked about this before. What? Yeah, it means you meet the standard, right? You meet the standard. So if you are eligible for, in Taiwan, you have to be how old to be eligible for a driver's license? 18, right? So to be eligible to get a driver's license, you have to be 18. In America, it's 16. I was talking to somebody just recently, and they told me that in their country, to drive a motor scooter, the eligibility is 13, which is kind of shocking. I was like, wow, 13 years old. Actually, it was France. Someone was telling me that when you're 13 years old, you can apply for some sort of motor scooter license or something. I don't know if that's only in the countryside, because see, they said if you live in the xiangxia, in the rural areas, you don't have, there's no way to get around. There's no buses, there's anything. So you can become eligible to apply for a scooter license. I don't know. This is what they told me. I don't know if that's true or not. So yeah, now we talked about people who are eligible for marriage, okay? Means they're ready to get married, or they could get married because they're at a certain age, or they're, whatever. So why don't we say together, eligible. Eligible. Okay, so they're only eligible for permanent residency. This is permanent residency. Only after they have legally stayed in Taiwan for at least 5 years, and then every year they have to be here at least 183 days, okay? Yeah, they've talked about lowering this to maybe less, maybe 3 years or something, but so far it's 5 years. Okay, so let's read this. For foreign nationals who are neither Chinese nor residents of Hong Kong or Macau, stricter residency rules apply in Taiwan. They are eligible for permanent residency only after they have legally stayed in Taiwan for at least 5 years and spent more than 183 days each year in the country, the NIA said. Right. I forgot to mention, I mean, you probably know this, but when we say foreign nationals, it's just another way of saying citizens. If you say he is a Taiwanese national, it means he's a Taiwanese citizen. So national, I know it means 全国, but here it means, when we talk about a person, it means a citizen, okay? An American national, a Taiwanese national, it means you're a citizen of that country. Not a resident, but a citizen, okay? So it says here, we'll read, I think maybe, okay. Tiki, whose application is still under review, thinks there is not much hope for her, as there is no telling whether the government would change its immigration policy for Hong Kongers. The government has a right to change its immigration rules, but shouldn't those who are already here be exempt from those revisions, she asked. Okay, so her application is still being reviewed, or you say it's under review, thinks there's not much hope for her. There is no telling whether the government would change its immigration policy for Hong Kong. When we say there is no telling whether something would happen, it means what? It means there is no, you cannot tell. Or you could simply say it is uncertain, 不一定, whether the government will change its immigration policy. If you say there is no telling what will happen tomorrow, it means I'm not certain what will happen tomorrow. I am uncertain what will happen tomorrow. There is no telling what he will do. Okay? So, like I was reading an article this morning, it said, there's no telling what Xi Jinping will do in the future. Means we don't know. It's uncertain. Okay. So the government has a right, okay, they have that 权利 to change its immigration rules, but shouldn't those means people who are already here be exempt from those revisions. Now, if you are exempt from something, what does that mean? Yeah, it means it does not apply to you. Okay, so let me think here. Some people are exempt from paying taxes. They don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to 付税金, right? Because they have some special status. maybe because they're, I don't know, I'm making this up, but maybe because they're a certain age, or maybe they have a physical handicap or something, but they are exempt. Someone might be exempt from, what might you be exempt from? Okay, some people are exempt from paying for the buses or paying for MRT, public transportation, because they're a certain age, right? Okay, so if you are exempt from something, it means that does not apply to you. You don't have to do that. So she's saying people who have already come to Taiwan, if you're already in Taiwan and they change the rule, shouldn't you be exempt from that change? Okay, shouldn't you use the old standard? So why don't we say that word together, exempt from. Exempt from. Okay. Sure. Okay, sure. Okay, so let's read this then, and then I think we'll be done. Tiki, whose application is still under review, thinks there is not much hope for her, as there is no telling whether the government would change its immigration policy for Hong Kongers. The government has a right to change its immigration rules, but shouldn't those who are already here be exempt from those revisions? Let's say it again. Be exempt from those revisions. Revisions? She asked. Okay. I forgot to mention this word. What is a revision? What's a simple word for revision? Yes, a change. And revision comes from the word what? What's the word it comes from? To revise, right? So if you revise something, we say to revise simply means to change, to revise. I revise my plan. I revise my report. I revise my, anything you change. Now, often it means that you've already created something and then you go back and you make some changes. Okay. This word gets used a lot with plans, like qihua, I'm going to revise my plans, or you could say I revise my ideas, my opinions. Okay. So a revision is a change. Why don't we say it together? To revise. To revise. Revisions. Revisions. Right. So when you were a student and you wrote a report, sometimes after the teacher looked at it, they might ask you to make revisions to your report or your essay or your whatever you wrote, your article. Okay. Okay, so that's all we have time for. But I will say, I'll say one more time, I think that Taiwan needs to welcome people from Hong Kong and other countries because right now Taiwan needs all the human resources that they can get. I don't know if I told you, when I talked to local restaurants recently, Canting, every single Canting 老板, their number one problem right now is what? The number one problem is not enough people. 没有员工. They cannot find enough employees. No, everyone tells me the same thing. In fact, I know one restaurant, he had two restaurants. One owner, he had two restaurants. He had to close one restaurant because he had no employees. So he said Taiwan needs to open up for more people to come because there's not enough people to work in jobs. So anyhow, maybe people don't want to work in those jobs. I don't know. But yeah. Okay, good. Well, I hope you have a happy moon festival. Just make sure you don't eat too many moon cakes, right? Maybe just one a day, one a day. That's probably good enough. No, not two, one. Yeah, but enjoy your barbecue, and if you have barbecue and moon and pomelo yozu, right? Yeah. So okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hello， 大家好，我叫 Johnny， 大家好，我跟几个同学有开一个 LINE 的群组，我们会把上课笔记放在那个群组里面。那如果说大家有兴趣，可以来找我。那另外还有就是我们就是下个礼拜也会办英文的一个读书会，就是我们已经办大概3-4个月了。那有兴趣的人可以一起来找我们练习英文口说。那有问题都可以来跟我说，谢谢。